An outback grazier sets his fences, checks his water troughs, and returns 3 days later. The heavy timber gates are splintered, the reinforced steel mesh is torn to shreds, and yet not a single beast from the paddock is missing. Instead, left behind on the shattered posts is a pungent, oily musk, a scent so suffocatingly potent it turns the stomach. Something has stalked the boundary lines, deliberately dismantled the barriers, and marked the ruins with its own defiant stench. It is a creature roughly the size of a medium dog, a shadow that slips through the scrub unseen, a relentless force that even a massive feral boar or a dingo pack will actively avoid. This is the Tasmanian devil, known scientifically as Sarcophilus harrisi. Today, we are stripping away the cartoon fabrications, the colonial myths, and the campfire tallies to uncover the real animal that has earned a terrifying reputation across the Australian continent. This is a story rooted deep in the ancient soil of Australia, and the further you dig into the evolutionary history of this bizarre marsupial, the more fascinating it becomes. Millennia before European maritime explorers first mapped the rugged coastlines of the southern Australian landmass, the Indigenous peoples of Australia held a profound, deeply complex relationship with this nocturnal carnivore. To the traditional custodians of the land, this animal was never a comical caricature. It was a deeply respected entity tied to the spiritual fabric of the bush. In the Dreamtime narratives of various nations across ancient Australia, this creature was often depicted as a clever, uncompromising strategist of the night, a being that refused to yield to larger adversaries and possessed an unearthly voice that could pierce the thickest canopy. Long before modern science began cataloguing the unique fauna of the Australian wilderness, the first footpaths across the continent crossed paths with this master of survival. Its bones, unearthed in ancient middens across modern-day Victoria and New South Wales, prove that it was once a dominant ecological force right across mainland Australia, a testament to its enduring legacy on the Australian continent. When the first European waves of settlers and naturalists stepped ashore in Tasmania, the isolated island state of Australia, the native wildlife threw them into a state of absolute bewilderment. They were face to face with an ecosystem entirely isolated from the rest of the world, and this specific creature left them utterly speechless. It fit no known European category. It was neither a badger, nor a wolf, nor a hyena, but something completely singular, a pouch-bearing carnivore born of an ancient lineage. Lacking the vocabulary for such a creature, early colonial diarists described it as a literal monster, an insatiable, bloodthirsty demon, inherently vicious and utterly devoid of fear. They heard the unholy, screeching shrieks echoing from the dense, wet forests of the Tasmanian wilderness at midnight, saw the cavernous pink gape of its jaws in the firelight, and gave it the name that stuck forever, the devil. But this fear-driven folklore completely missed the true nature of the animal. Behind the historical hysteria lies an evolutionary masterpiece of endurance and raw power. Biologically, the Tasmanian devil holds a prestigious title. It is the largest surviving carnivorous marsupial on Earth. While it shares its broader Australian habitat with other unique marsupials, the devil operates in a league of its own. Adult males generally tip the scales at around 12 kilograms, while females hover closer to 8 kilograms, though robust specimens in the remote, undisturbed coastal reaches of Western Tasmania can weigh significantly more. Structurally, it resembles a miniature, heavily muscled bear. The body is low-slung, compact and dense, built not for explosive feline sprinting but for sheer, unyielding power. The forelimbs are slightly longer than the hind limbs, giving the animal a distinct, rolling, low-to-the-ground gait that looks deceptively clumsy. Yet, out in the tangled undergrowth of the temperate rainforests or across the windswept coastal heaths of Australia, this physics-defying build allows them to navigate dense timber, rocky scree slopes, and thick scrub with astonishing agility. Every single aspect of this animal is fine-tuned for high-efficiency survival in the unpredictable Australian environment. The coat is a coarse, jet-black fur, often broken by a stark white stripe or crescent across the chest and rump, providing perfect camouflage beneath the shadows of the eucalyptus canopy. The tail acts as a dynamic fat reserve. A healthy, well-fed devil sports a thick, turgid tail, drawing down on these energy reserves when food becomes scarce during the lean winter months. But the crowning achievement of the devil's anatomy sits squarely between its ears. The skull is disproportionately massive, housing an immense complex of jaw muscles that generate a bite force unparalleled for a mammal of its dimensions. Pound for pound, its bite rivals that of an African hyena, allowing it to exert enough pressure to shatter thick timber, crush steel traps, and splinter the dense, calcified leg bones of a full-grown kangaroo. This is not mindless aggression. It is a highly specialized tool designed to ensure that absolutely nothing goes to waste in the competitive wildlands of Australia. To truly understand the Tasmanian devil, you have to look at how this creature moves and operates across the unique landscape of Australia, because the reality of its daily endurance completely defies its slow, lumbering appearance. This isn't a predator that stalks its prey with the silent grace of a feral cat, nor does it run them down with the pack mentality of a dingo. The devil is a marathon walker, a methodical traverser of the Australian bush. In a single night, a single individual can comfortably cover up to 16 kilometres, moving at a steady, rhythmic pace through the pitch darkness. They navigate the rugged topography of the Tasmanian wilderness, climbing steep ridges, pushing through dense horizontal scrub, and crossing freezing creeks with a relentless, machine-like persistence. For decades, researchers tracking these marsupials with radio collars across Australia have been staggered by their sheer stamina. They don't stop to rest. They simply keep pushing forward, driven by an incredibly high metabolic rate that demands a constant influx of calories. This endurance is paired with sensory apparatus that is perfectly adapted to the nocturnal realities of the Australian continent. While their eyesight is highly acute in the dark, particularly for detecting the slightest movement, it is their sense of smell that serves as their primary window to the world. A devil can catch the faint, airborne scent of decaying matter from several kilometres away, even when the carcass is buried deep beneath fallen bark or hidden within a dense thicket of tea tree scrub. Their long, highly sensitive whiskers, or vibrissae, form an intricate radar system around their snout and eyes, allowing them to feel their way through the absolute darkness of the dense forest undergrowth without making a sound. When a devil does find food, it triggers one of the most misunderstood spectacles in the entire Australian animal kingdom. Because they are primarily scavengers rather than active hunters, multiple devils will inevitably converge on the same carcass. What follows looks and sounds like absolute, chaotic warfare. The bush erupts with a spine-chilling chorus of guttural growls, harsh coughs, and piercing, demonic screeches that can be heard for miles. But science has revealed that this isn't mindless, bloodthirsty violence. It is a highly ritualized form of communication. The terrifying vocalizations and the wide, dramatic yawning displays, where they showcase those massive, bone-crushing jaws, are actually designed to establish a strict feeding hierarchy and prevent serious physical injury. The louder, more aggressive animal usually takes dominance at the carcass without a single tooth being sunk into flesh. It is a bluffing game of high stakes, a sophisticated social language evolved over millions of years on the isolated southern edge of Australia to ensure the species can share a communal resource without tearing each other apart. When it comes to the actual mechanics of eating, the devil's Latin name, Sarcophilus, which translates roughly to flesh lover, becomes vividly apparent. They are the ultimate cleanup crew of the Australian ecosystem. Where other carnivores leave behind the tough hide, the skull, and the dense leg bones of a fallen animal, the devil consumes absolutely everything. Their specialized teeth, combined with that extraordinary bite pressure, allow them to effortlessly crush and swallow chunks of bone, thick cartilage, and the toughest fur. A group of devils can reduce a full-grown wallaby to a mere bloodstain on the grass in a matter of minutes. This total consumption is an invaluable ecological service. By completely removing carcasses from the environment, they prevent the buildup of harmful bacteria and drastically reduce the breeding grounds for destructive blowflies, directly protecting the broader health of wildlife across Australia. Their stomach acids are so incredibly potent that they can destroy deadly pathogens that would otherwise contaminate the local soil and waterways. Yet, despite this formidable power and terrifying vocal range, the devil exhibits a remarkably cautious, almost timid disposition when confronting anything outside its immediate social hierarchy. When a human walks into a clearing where a devil is feeding, the animal doesn't charge or attack. Its first instinct is to freeze completely, assessing the threat before turning to slip silently into the shadows of the blackwood trees. If cornered, it relies on a completely different kind of defense mechanism, one that mirrors the notorious tactics of certain overseas mammals, but carries a uniquely Australian intensity, under conditions of extreme stress. Specialised apocrine glands located around the base of the tail release a volatile, pungent chemical secretion. This oily musk is incredibly potent, clinging to the surrounding air and saturating the undergrowth with a foul, suffocating aroma that acts as a highly effective deterrent against curious predators. This chemical shield, combined with their daunting vocal displays, means that larger, more aggressive carnivores across the Australian continent generally decide that crossing paths with a devil is simply more trouble than it is worth. While the Tasmanian devil is often framed as a solitary wanderer of the night, modern Australian field biology has completely shattered this simplistic view, revealing a complex social network that scientists are only just beginning to fully comprehend. For generations, the orthodox view within the scientific community was that these animals lived entirely isolated lives, meeting only under the brief, chaotic truce of the breeding season or when fighting over a carcass. However, the advent of cutting-edge GPS tracking collars and remote microchip scanners at den sites across Australia has turned this narrative on its head. Researchers have discovered that devils actually maintain a highly sophisticated, long-term spatial awareness of their neighbours. They are not mindless loners. They form intricate communities where individuals know exactly who is who holds dominance, and whose territory borders their own in the dense Australian bush. Even more surprising is the discovery of cooperative elements in their behaviour. While communal hunting is a rarity among marsupials, researchers working in the remote corners of Australia have documented fascinating instances of social learning and shared information. Younger devils will frequently trail experienced adults, learning the location of reliable foraging grounds, communal latrines, and safe denning sites across the landscape. The iconic, eerie choruses that echo through the night are now understood to be an acoustic grid, a way for individuals to map out the positions of other devils across vast distances without needing to make direct physical contact. This social dynamic becomes particularly intense during the Australian winter, which heralds the onset of the highly competitive breeding season. Between May and July, the quiet eucalypt forests of Australia transform into a battleground of strategy and endurance. Males must defend their access to receptive females, undertaking grueling patrols across territories that can span up to 20 square kilometres. When a pair does come together, the courtship is anything but gentle. It is an intense, robust affair where the male will forcefully guard the female within a secure den for days at a time, ensuring that no rival can challenge his lineage. Yet, beneath this seemingly harsh exterior lies one of the most delicate and awe-inspiring reproductive mechanisms found anywhere in the Australian animal kingdom, like all marsupials. The female devil boasts a highly specialised reproductive strategy adapted to the erratic climate of the Australian continent. Following a remarkably brief gestation period of just 21 days, she gives birth to a massive litter of up to 20 or 30 tiny, underdeveloped joeys. At this stage, each newborn is no larger than a single grain of rice, weighing a mere fraction of a gram. Blind, hairless and remarkably fragile, these tiny pioneers must embark on an epic, perilous journey, crawling through a jungle of coarse fur from the birth canal to the mother's backwards-facing pouch. This pouch is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, designed specifically so that it doesn't scoop up dirt or forest debris when the mother is digging or moving low to the ground through the Australian dirt. However, there is a brutal catch. The pouch contains only 4 milk teats. It is a stark, uncompromising race for survival. The first 4 joeys to reach the pouch and secure a permanent attachment to a teat will survive. The rest, unfortunately, perish. This fierce natural selection ensures that only the strongest, most resilient offspring go on to carry the genetic torch for the species in the demanding environments of Australia. For the chosen 4, the pouch becomes a secure, highly nutritious haven for the next 4 months. They grow at an astonishing rate, sustained by milk that dynamically alters its chemical composition to match their developmental stages. By the time the Australian spring rolls around, bringing a relative abundance of food to the woodlands, the joeys have grown too large for the pouch. The mother will gently transfer them to a nursery den, often a hollow log, an old wombat burrow, or a deep rocky crevice lined with dry bark and ferns. Here they take their first cautious steps into the outside world, practicing the growls, postures, and bite mechanics that will define their adult lives. They will remain under her strict supervision for several more months, learning the essential arts of scavenging, climbing, and navigating the nocturnal grid of Australia, before finally dispersing into the wilderness to claim their own territory. Today, the Tasmanian devil stands at a critical crossroads, serving as both an ecological linchpin and a powerful symbol of wildlife conservation across the Australian continent. For over 2 centuries, this resilient marsupial has faced an onslaught of human-induced threats, from early colonial bounty hunting to severe habitat fragmentation caused by agricultural expansion and road development. But the most devastating blow came in the late 20th century with the emergence of devil facial tumor disease, a rare and transmissible clonal cancer that decimated wild populations by upwards of 80%. In response to this catastrophic decline, a monumental, collaborative effort has been undertaken by Australian scientists, conservation organisations and Indigenous rangers to secure the future of the species. A landmark achievement of this initiative has been the historic reintroduction of disease-free devils to large, protected sanctuaries on mainland Australia, re-establishing their ancient role as a top-tier native predator after a 3,000-year absence from the mainland landscape. As these apex marsupials return to their ancestral grounds across Australia, the ethics of wildlife observation and scientific study have taken centre stage. Modern Australian field biologists have shifted away from invasive handling techniques, opting instead for non-intrusive monitoring strategies. The deployment of high-resolution, infrared trail cameras, acoustic recording grids, and non-invasive hair snaring traps allows researchers to gather vital genetic and behavioural data without causing unnecessary stress to these highly sensitive animals. For the public and wildlife enthusiasts traversing the spectacular national parks of Australia, the message from conservationists is clear. The privilege of witnessing a devil in the wild carries a profound responsibility. Observing these nocturnal creatures requires strict adherence to ethical guidelines, maintaining a respectful distance, securing food waste to prevent dangerous roadside scavenging, and never using artificial flash photography that can blind and disorient a nocturnal animal in the pitch-black Australian bush. Ultimately, the survival of the Tasmanian devil is an inspiring testament to the raw, unyielding power of evolutionary adaptation. Having outlasted ice ages, prehistoric climate shifts, and the arrival of modern industry, this formidable creature continues to patrol the rugged undergrowth of the unique Australian ecosystem. It remains an irreplaceable custodian of the land, an efficient environmental cleanser that works tirelessly through the night to maintain the biodiversity and health of the bush. As we look to the future, the ongoing preservation of this magnificent species ensures that the haunting primordial screeches of the devil will continue to echo across the landscapes of Australia for generations to come, reminding us of the wild, untamable spirit that defines the natural heritage of the Australian continent.